So the way that we have always produced our blogs, and the way that just about every blogger does, is you start with an initial batch of content where you're writing on the topics that you think will be winners, where you can get traffic and that you can beat out the competition. And you kind of see how that does, and then you're finding more keywords that you can write about, and you're writing those. And I mean, I've gone on for years doing this on a website, as you're just producing more and more content as you go. And as we've learned a little bit in 2020, that's not working as well.
Right, so the traditional approach is kind of like if you were playing a game of Battleship. And in the game, you say C3, and you find out it's a hit. And then you say F17.
Why would you do such a thing?
But that's what it is. That's what people have been doing in the blog space. We create a bunch of content. Some are winners, some are losers. We create a bunch more content.
So the Battleship Method is about taking an organized and strategic approach to first gridding out the different areas of your niche, analyzing what worked, and then only working on those effective shots forevermore on your site.
So the Battleship Method consists of 3 distinct phases. The first phase that Jim alluded to was gridding. And this is a methodical, strategic approach to creating content that really covers our niche. So let's say you're in the parenting industry, that's your niche, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna create some content around baby products. I'm gonna create some content, methods for helping babies go to sleep. Maybe these are some different categories I intend to cover over the course of my site. And then as I go do my search analysis, as I use the Google auto-suggest or the alphabet soup method on Google, I can come up with a list of topics that should be topics that people are actually searching for. And then I'm going to methodically create content, not necessarily all in one of those spaces. I'm going to methodically grid them out, create some content in each of those different categories over the course of as quick a time as I can, so that we can get those out there on Google so that we can seek some feedback.
Now that seems obvious, but it's really not.
No.
Most people, when you go look at their blog, they kind of get on one track of something that they're really excited about writing about, and they just write 30 different aspects of that one thing. What if you find out that it just didn't perform how you think in terms of the competition or the search volume? Now you've wasted a year to try to figure that out. So methodically creating a plan of where your content is going to go for the whole first year is a huge part of this plan. And that's why we teach the brand plan in our course. All right, so phase 2 is the analyze phase. And this is where we're really putting in process some of the things, putting in a methodical process to something that we've kind of only done haphazardly in the past and missed some really big opportunities. And so those of you who are Project 24 members, today we just dropped a new course that's like, once your site is 1 year old, step by step by step, to analyze all of the content you currently have and decide what to do going forward. But for those of you on YouTube, I want to give you the general idea of what we're doing here. So in the analyze phase, you've taken all these shots on your Battleship game, right? And you want to know what worked and what didn't work. So our goal is for each blog post to deliver 1,000 page views per month. And so if I wrote a post that ranks number 1 or number 2 on Google when I search the primary search phrase for that article that I was targeting, if it's only bringing in 200 people a month, page views a month, that's when I'm not going to spend any more time on that search phrase, because it's very unlikely to ever get to the 1,000 a month. You're already number 1 or number 2. You're probably not going to get a whole lot more traffic than that. And then we look at other topics where maybe we rank number 9 or we're on page 2, but from some of the other things we saw from other things that hit, we said, I think that one could work. I just didn't write a good enough article for that. That's one that we say, okay, put this one in the rewrite category. We need to do something with this. And then others we're going to see where we did get some traffic and we ranked lower. You know, maybe you rank 4 or 5, but it brought in 100, 200 page views. If you're ranking number 5, number 4, and it brought in 200 page views, that's a pretty good sign that if you could pop up to number 1, then you're probably going to bring in at least 1,000 page views per month. And so we're putting things in the rewrite, keep, never touch again buckets so that we can make an informed decision about where to go in the future. Now, this is the step that we've just always kind of haphazardly done, like I mentioned. So you write posts and then you're like, I'll write more posts. Instead of like in a game of Battleship, it would be stupid to get a hit and then jump to a different place of the board. And so you can see where we're going with this. If you're analyzing everything you're writing and carefully analyzing what worked and what didn't, the future is there where you have 200 blog posts that you own the number 1 position on. And I mean, that could bring a huge amount of traffic, and you don't really need to keep writing a bunch more articles.
Once we've completed phase 2, now we can jump right into phase 3, which is the win phase. In the win phase, we're going to take those different buckets that we've put content into. The things that we're just going to leave, we're just going to leave, right? The things that we decided to rewrite, we're going to take the time to go through them, assess the competition, and figure out what is it that I need to do to be able to rank above all the rest. How do I win position number 1? Because this topic has proved itself to be valuable for me to own with this website. And so what this may look like, it may mean that, you know what, this is just an EAT issue. I need to work on EAT for my entire website. Likely this is an issue where the other person maybe has some original research, or maybe nobody has some original research and you don't know why theirs outranked you. But if you could do some original research and put your own statistics together, put together downloadable PDFs, put together some infographics, just make your blog post better. And I'm not talking about just making it a little bit better, but I'm talking about like taking your content a full step above what others are willing to do. And if it's going to take you 8 hours per blog post to do this work, who cares? This is the content that you've already proven has a chance to really drive traffic to your website. If you can own 100 or 200 of these search phrases where you just rank number 1 or maybe number 2, you will have consistent traffic, amazing traffic for the long haul. Chances are you'll be able to retain most of those spots for years to come, because most bloggers are not willing to put in that work, because most bloggers are always gridding.
So when you're gridding, you hear people say, create amazing content, create epic content. It's not very smart to do that in the beginning phases of your website to some extent. If I'm just testing the waters, I can't spend 16 hours on one blog post. No way. I would never make any progress. I'd never figure out my niche and what kind of content I need to write in order to win. It just takes too long. And so that's why we have response posts. It's like we can cover a lot of area in a 1 hour write. That's why we have the post recipes. We're showing you, hey, here's an hour, bam, try this new thing out. But then when you see, hey, there's a winner here, but I'm number 4, now spending 8 hours on a single blog post is not at all a waste of the time.
Nope.
Because you know that's going to bring in 1,000 people a month for potentially years to come. And so I'm going to go do original research. I'm going to go take a custom image for this. I'm going to create a table. I'm going to put in that extra time that nobody else is willing to, because they don't know what I know about this keyword. Okay, so here's why we're so excited about implementing this right now. Google is really focused on high quality content. We keep hearing them talk about it over and over again. And so the number of links to your website matters, and it always has. And there's some kind of ratio between the number of links to your site and how much content you have. So great, you have 100,000 links, but you have 10 million blog posts. It tells Google that, like, yeah, this actually is pretty thin content. And so by only working on winners, by every time you find a winner, you rewrite and rework that post until you are number 1. And as soon as you start to fade, you're reworking it to just dominate everything you do. So Google says when this guy has a blog post or this gal, it's a winner. And so I think it works very well to Google's focus on content to have excellent link to content ratios without just not covering enough content.
The next one is that your content never fades. So again, with most blogs, what's going to happen is you're going to have content that's going to get outdated. And what do? You forget about it, right? Well, that content already has links to it, right? That content already has built up reputation with Google. What if we could revamp that content and keep it evergreen? You can't do that if you're putting thousands of blog posts on a website over the years. But if instead, again, there are 100 or 200 blog posts really ever on your website that are actively being maintained, the content never fades, it's always up to date, and therefore you never have to lose a #1 ranking again, because your content is always the newest, freshest, best content out there.
Yeah, so we're doing those content audits consistently, regularly scheduled, and we have an orderly process to get there so that we can make sure if anything dropped to #2, we are going to notice it immediately and we know exactly how to approach the rewrite to get it back up. Next, search analysis takes time. It takes time to search through and look for those cracks and new territory to gain. And you don't need to. You've already explored the territory and you've identified what those cracks are before. We're just going back to them in an orderly way and making sure we hit on them.
The next one is just imagine how much less your content needs to cost if you have so many fewer blog posts. If you have outsourced any of your writing or are doing the writing yourself, that cost, either in money or time, is a lot up front because you're having to add new content all the time. But on an ongoing basis, you don't need to be adding, again, dozens and hundreds of blog posts to your website. You can just take the time, one post at a time, to update the content that needs to be updated, to rework the content that you've identified should be reworked to gain the same amount of traffic, right? As a site with 10 times as many blog posts, because yours, again, is always up to date and relevant.
So during the gridding phase, it could be that you write 75 blog posts all by yourself, or maybe you're outsourcing some and we write 300 blog posts. But then once we identify the effective 150 to 200, you may just keep working on those for a few years, and that could produce 200,000 page views every single month because you know we're only working on the winners. So the point of this whole thing is, why write another 100 blog posts instead of taking the 100 blog posts, using that information, that incredibly valuable information, and moving forward? I mean, imagine if you're starting a new site, if you got to spy on somebody's Google Analytics that's been in that industry for a year, woohoo, you could dominate that industry. But we have that same information. We don't always take advantage of it. At least I know us personally, we haven't always. Sometimes we ignore it because we're always just looking at new territory. We didn't really have a set process for how to take advantage of this. So Project 24 members, go log in today because we just dropped today a new course on the Battleship Method where we'll give you all the details. We'll give you a tool for doing that content audit, and we recommend doing it at the 1-year mark. As soon as your site is a year old, do your content audit. Let's look through. We'll show you what goes in each one of those buckets, exactly how to do a rewrite of those posts with the redirects and all that stuff. So definitely log in. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. Give us a subscribe if you're new to the channel, and if you've been around for a while, we really appreciate everybody's support. We love making this content for you and talking about blogging each week. If you can't tell, we're pretty excited about it.
No, but I already guessed D5.
Oh.
So that's how I'm being methodical.
I don't know who set up my ships. I always like to stack them up real close, thinking I was being clever, and then my brothers would just wipe me out, and I'd run to my bedroom crying. Or you like clump them all up tight, and then you put your little 2-1 down in the other corner. They'll never guess it.